but I really stress that you need to be doing aerobic fitness of some sort. You don't have to run marathons, you don't have to run at all, but getting out and walking and being active or riding a bike or whatever you want to do should be like the absolute first initial step. And if you're unhealthy and you fix your diet, your weight will start to come down and your energy will go up as your mitochondria start to repair themselves and get better able to produce energy. And you will find all of this stuff a lot easier.
Yeah, totally.
And a lot more fun.
And a lot more fun. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Since the pandemic, I just checked this the other day on my phone. I typically average about 10 miles walking a day. And I would argue that the walking has a linear benefit as long as there's no injuries or whatever. I think the more you do it, the more it helps. I don't see like where you can walk too much almost. You know what I mean?
They've actually looked into that, because you would think, and I'm sure that there's a level of running that is too much. They don't know what it is. The benefit keeps going up. So if you look at ultra runners, people who run, longer than a marathon, and some of these people do it all the time, the health benefit keeps going up. There's no upper limit to this health benefit. So, and what's interesting is the longer you do it, the better it gets for you, because running, this kind of sounds funny to say, running is a skills-based sport. You do learn not to trip, which is the general downside to running, is you trip and hurt yourself. And I say this having broken a rib last year when I tripped and fell on my watch.
Oh man.
But that doesn't happen much anymore. But even doing that, there's a benefit. You learn the skill, you learn to look down and not to check your watch when you're in the middle of running in a rocky area, which is what I do.
Wow, that's great.
I like to tell people, it's so easy to talk yourself out of doing a run or going for a walk. I have literally, including the runs where I've broken a bone doing something like that, I have never had a bad run, right?
Never regretted it later.
You always, assuming you're wearing the right shoes, you always feel better at the end of the run, and it doesn't matter how crappy you feel at the beginning of the run. The only exception is if you're sick, right? Yeah. That's the only real time where you're like, I'm a big fan of heart rate training. I've literally had runs where I went out and my heart rate was just going crazy, and I was like, okay, I can't run today. And it turned out that my heart rate was high because I was coming down with an illness, and there wasn't any symptom other than a high heart rate, so it's heart rate training is something I'm a big fan of. The benefit of heart rate training is that you're training your body specifically to burn fat for fuel, which has its own benefits. It makes you, super resistant to getting tired. My wife and I did a hike 2 summers ago. I got her into all this stuff, and we went out and did a hike, and we got up in the morning, and I was like, I'm not really hungry. Are you? She's like, no, I'm not really hungry. And we went out and we walked, 14 miles with backpacks before we got hungry enough to decide that we wanted to stop and have some food.
That's amazing.
Right. It's amazing to have that capability, even if you don't need it. Just being in an airport and the food's all crap and you're like, I don't need to eat.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's so frustrating when I go on my annual backpacking trip, and that's a 10-mile hike in with a big heavy pack, and everybody has to stop every 2 miles to get their snacks and get everything out of their pack. And you're just like, guys, have some salt, drink a bit of water. Let's go. Let's get up to the site and enjoy, being up there. And you're talking to a guy,
snacks is another thing that goes by the wayside. I laugh when I watch backpacking videos and they're like, oh well, you got hip pockets for your snacks, and I'm just like,
come on,
it's a snack.
Come on, absolutely not needed. And like I said, you're talking to a guy who when I was 18 years old was given a TV VCR combo to take to college with me. That will date me just a little bit, and I pissed my parents off because I returned it to buy a Polar M220 heart rate monitor.
Oh, wow. You are a real fitness nerd.
Old school. Yeah, exactly.
I have to bow in admiration. That's impressive.
There you go. No, we love heart rate training. It's something I've been into for a very long time. On my walk this morning, I was wearing my Earth Runner sandals, which is like a 6mm kind of Vibram sole with a few little straps. And apparently one of my neighbors, somebody I had met before, with kind of was on the same path, and he started talking about he pointed at my shoes. He's like, I don't know how you can walk in those things. It looks like that would be really painful. I'm like, no, this is actually, these are the most amazing shoes I've ever worn. And he's in Hoka's. Is that the brand? Like the absolute
the ultimate marshmallow shoe.
Worst shoe you can possibly buy. And he was talking about how he's got bunions and hammer toe and his knees hurt, and he's going to hike later, but he's really bummed because his knee's going to hurt. And how could, wearing less on his feet actually improve, his walking condition? And luckily I had a few minutes, I got to talk to him. But can you tell us a little bit about why barefoot, walking, running, anything is so beneficial?
Well, it's so exasperating. I mean, if you've ever broken a bone, like your arm or your leg or something, and they stick you in a cast, what's the first thing that happens? Your muscles atrophy. It's frankly mind-boggling how fast your muscles atrophy, right? I mean, literally, if they stick you in bed for 2 weeks, you can't live a normal life because your muscles have atrophied so fast. So, and in any area of fitness or medicine, what do they tell you? Work your muscles. You need muscle strength, right? You got arthritis, they're now saying you should run because it'll make your muscles stronger, and that's good for your arthritis. Then we come to your feet, right? If you wear a regular sneaker, only 4 of the, I think it's 56 muscles in your feet actually get a workout, right? So you are causing the muscles in your feet to atrophy. And I will tell you, when I got a pair, so the book Born to Run, which really opened my eyes to this, came out in 2009. I had bought a pair of Vibram 5 fingers, these little toe glove things, 3 years before that. And wow. I was a hiker. I had done, I would do 10, 12-mile hikes in my hiking boots. My first job was actually selling hiking boots when I was in high school.
Oh, wow.
And so, I was a Boy Scout. I've done three states worth of the Appalachian Trail, so I was a pretty serious hiker. So I got these things and I went for a mile walk and my feet were in agony. Why? Because the muscles in my feet were so weak, I couldn't hold my body weight up for a mile. Mile, right?
Wow.
I had to sit down. It hurt so much. And it took time, not as much time as you would think. It took probably 6 weeks from when I really decided several years later to get into the whole barefoot thing. It took 6 weeks from me doing it 100% to climbing the highest mountain in the state of Maine, Mount Katahdin, which is a really tough mountain to do, very rocky. And one that I've done numerous times. My family's from Maine. And I came down and I was like, my feet feel better at the end of this than they did at the beginning. This is unbelievable. I wasn't able to make the whole hike. I did about 8 miles, and then my feet were so exhausted, I had to put some sneakers on that I brought along as a fallback. And once I put the sneakers on, because all of a sudden I didn't need all those tired muscles in my feet, I was able to run. But what that told me was I wasn't using all those muscles in my feet. Now, since then, I went out to Colorado, and in these toe shoes, I went to climb Pikes Peak, and I got lost because I'm an idiot. And my 14-mile hike turned into a 20-mile hike up and down the mountain. And then the next morning I got up and I ran a 5K, and I did a great time in the 5K because now I have strong feet. And what's interesting is when you strengthen I've redefined core, right? As a result of this experience, I have redefined core. Your core is not your torso. Your core is your torso and your legs and your feet. And when you fix your shoes, the first thing that strengthens is your feet. And then it goes all the way up the kinetic chain until finally the last thing that you feel it in is your arms, right? And it literally, I've talked to so many people about this who they're like, oh, my feet hurt. And then they're like, oh, wow, my feet feel so much better now. And then they're like, now my calves hurt, and then now my knees hurt, and it literally goes right up the body until it gets to your back, and your lower back pain typically goes away because those muscles strengthen up because you're using your core, right, from your torso to the ground correctly, right, the way we evolved to use it.
Yep.
And downsides, it's hard to find shoes. That's the downside.
Yeah.
And people give you weird looks. I mean, the last time I went up Mount Katahdin in Maine, I was wearing these Luna sandals, and which are like, a little thin piece of Vibram rubber with a little leather top sole on it, and then a couple of straps to hold it onto your foot. And I'm going up the north end of the Appalachian Trail. And I remember this one guy, there were two guys who were great. This one guy looks at me, he goes, why are you wearing those things? And I looked at him in his hiking boots and I said, why are you wearing those things? I'm passing you.
That's amazing.
And the other guy, and he was like, yeah, that's a really good point. And then the other guy was like, his wife was like, why aren't you wearing hiking boots? And I was like, why should I? And her husband goes, yeah, if I can wear those, why the hell am I wearing these things?
That's amazing.
And I waved to them, and I beat them to the top and then beat them back down.
That's amazing.
Because that's the other thing, is they don't weigh anything, right? And just mechanically taking weight off your feet makes hiking and running easier, and it makes you faster.
Yep.
The other amazing benefit. So, okay, this is, so we've established that I had weak feet and weak ankles, right? And I was still running. So on rocky trails in Connecticut, where the only type of trail we have is a rocky trail, and I would sprain my ankles like every quarter, right? Pretty good sprain. It was a pain in the butt. Ankle rolls were a regular part of my life, and they had been for my whole life. I haven't sprained my ankle in 12 years. I have had foot bridges flip out from under me. I have had round rocks roll away from underneath me. And your body just reacts when you can feel the ground, and when your legs and your feet are so much stronger. Sprained ankles just doesn't happen anymore, right?
Yeah.
That's probably the single biggest benefit, right? Don't get as many blisters. You don't get blisters from your shoes most of the time. You do get them occasionally, but I get way fewer injuries doing barefoot style running than I did wearing shoes.
Yeah.
And literally the only downside is a bit of inconvenience. Still trying to figure out a decent pair of winter boots to wear, because, as a result of this, my feet have changed shape dramatically. They're they're muscular now, so they're bigger and wider.
And they spread, toes.
They've spread. My bent big toe has straightened out. That was one of the first things that happens. My sister-in-law, she was like, I've got bunion. This was such a funny conversation. She's like, I've got bunions and lower back pain. I was like, you need new shoes. She's like, what? And she actually listened to me, God bless her. She was on deck for bunion surgery, and she went out and bought a pair of Vivo Barefoots because she worked standing up all day. And she calls me up one day and she's like, my bunions are going away and I no longer have any lower back pain. And I was like, yep, that's what happens.
Yep. That's right.
That's what happens.
That's right. Well, that was all super validating. I actually used that exact same analogy when I talked to this guy today about the calves and the atrophying muscles. And yeah, it is such a game changer to treat your feet the way they should be treated, almost like your hands. Like, what would happen if you wore gloves all the time? Like you would lose
or
dexterity.
Mittens, even worse, where you couldn't even use
worse.
Your fingers.
Good point. Yeah.
Because I mean, that's one of the things you realize. If you're wearing shoes with a thin sole, you actually use your toes to hold on to the ground as you're running, right? You engage your toes, you like wrap them around rocks and stuff. I mean, it's really, I have to say, probably one of the best periods of my life. And actually the initial period of going barefoot and minimalist shoes was just unbelievable, because I was using a part of my body that I'd never used before. And it was like, it was sensual, just this experience of walking around and feeling the earth through nerves that have been dead my whole life. And kind of the only thing I regret about really getting into it is that it doesn't feel that way. You know, the novelty wore off, but
Yep.
that was just an amazing period of
That's so
just,
awesome.
yeah. And it was phenomenal.
That's
Absolutely
awesome.
phenomenal.
I think about like when you talked about the rocky terrain, like that to me now is like foot massage time. Like, oh, I'm gonna feel all those different undulations, and it's such a game changer. My biggest resistance was throwing away all the hundreds and hundreds of dollars of shoes that I had already had, but so worth it. My only regret is not doing it way sooner. So yeah, I really appreciate that thoughtful explanation of Barefoot, and couldn't agree more. It is just such a game changer.